Boom, boom, boom. Welcome back to Ep.6 of the 708 Benchmark Podcast. I'm Peter Augustiniak, and I'm joined by my lovely companions, Lucas and Noah Birchman. This week, we take a look inside the world of college basketball as things begin to heat up leading into March Madness. We sit about a month away from the tournament, and so many things are still up in the air. We see the latest AP Top 25 poll with a new number one and some new teams near the back end. We take a look at upcoming conference tournament play and see what that might look like. And finally, we take a look at our March Madness preview and then we end with the locks and dogs of the week, also adding in coaches on the hot seat. So I think by this point, we all know the new top 25. Couple interesting things. You got Houston at number one, and you've got some surprise teams at the bottom. So, Lucas, I kind of want to get your thoughts on what you think the top 25 poll is. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good poll. I think I think the AP poll is not a very reliable metric just because it's a bunch of reporters that have no ability to watch every game. But it's how we judge teams. It's just how we do it in 2023. But I think it's pretty good this week. I mean, one thing I noticed is the only group of 5 team is San Diego State. Usually have a couple more of them like Charleston and FAU, but they've had some losses this year, so they're now out. The other thing I wanted to mention is Tennessee at 11 after losing 5 of their last 6 or 6 of their last 7, how many ever it's been. They've been slumping. So I think that I think Tennessee's a little high on this one. I think I'd have them more around 18 to 20 range.
Dude, I do agree with that. Like this poll, I like this poll, and Houston deserves to be number one. There were weeks where Bama deserved to be number one. There were weeks where Purdue deserved to be number one. But I think Houston truthfully has the best resume in the country. But I think it's a pretty good poll going all around. I don't really have any issues with it, but the one thing I do, and same as Luke, I think Tennessee is a little bit too high. If there's one critique you have to have, I think it could be that Tennessee is too high.
Yeah. Last thing before we move on is, yeah, I agree with both you guys. Again, being a huge SEC fan myself, I mean, Tennessee lost buzzer beaters to Mizzou and Vandy. We got swept by Kentucky, who hasn't been all that great this year. And like I've said in the past, Tennessee just doesn't have that score to go to down the stretch. You know, every team at the top of the rankings has that guy that they can go to. And I just don't think Tennessee has that guy, and I think that that's what's going to get him an early bounce in March.
Yeah, I think their offense is questionable at best. Their defense is elite. So, I mean, when you think about Tennessee's teams and the way they're built the last few years, I think you kind of see some similar things, similar flaws, I should say. I think that team is offensively challenged. They're an elite defense, which is why they are where they are, and that's just outside the top 10. But since those Grant Williams and Admiral Schofield teams, it just kind of seems like when a play breaks down, they don't really have that go-to guy that can go get a bucket. And I think that it could be a team's downfall in March, and especially be one of the reasons why you could be on an upset watch.
Yep. Yeah. Last thing I want to add about Tennessee before we move on is I would also argue that another one of those top guys would have been Kennedy Chandler. I know he hasn't played much in the NBA, but watching enough SEC basketball, that guy was a bucket in college.
He was good.
He was a guard. He was like Darius Garland was at Vanderbilt. They were just guards you did not want to go up against in late season SEC play. And Tennessee there's no one on Tennessee to be afraid of offensively this year. There just isn't. And that's why I don't even think they're going to go far in the SEC tournament. I mean,
you guys aren't fans of Zakai Ziegler?
that dude is a brick and a half. He's so bad. Yeah, he might give you 15 points a game on like 8 of 24 shooting.
I was just
Pretty
feeling the
much.
room out. I was just sensing
The
where we
problem
all
with-
thought about my man Zakai.
Yeah, no. I'm a
Not,
Zeno.
not,
I'm a
not
Zeno.
please never do that again. Just never ever say that again.
Fair. That's fair. Yeah. Anyways, moving on. Moving on to coaches on the hot seat / open coaching position. I want to go to you, Noah. And my question that I want to pose to you is, what do you think is kind of the biggest coaching opening in college basketball this offseason?
Well, it depends on if it turns into an opening or not, because it's Texas. Like if Rodney Terry, if they do not bring him back, then it's 100% Texas. It's the most successful program that would have a job opening that year. A team that's, yeah, their coach did not get fired for performance reasons, and we know why he got fired. But I think the most desirable spot for a coach is Texas. They're going to SEC, which might be a better outlook for them. They might have an easier time winning the SEC or competing in the SEC than they would the Big 12 when you're just talking about pure depth of a conference. But it's definitely Texas. Texas is the biggest storyline of the offseason, whatever they do with Rodney Terry, because they do have the ability to go and get a really big name guy. And yeah, I'll be paying attention closely to see what Texas does this offseason with Rodney Terry. Because I will say before is that Rodney Terry has been exceptional as an interim head coach. So I'll just kind of leave it at that.
If I was Texas, the only thing that would concern me is the higher ups in Texas would be Terry hasn't been a lead recruiter for an offseason yet. And I don't know how much they like his recruiting. Because let's be honest, I mean, he's been a great on-court coach. But if you can't recruit in college, you can't win. So
he does have assistant coach experience, though.
He does. I'm not.
It's up to
the
assistants to recruit.
No, I know, and I just you do want to see how he does as a recruiter, but I don't think he's going anywhere personally. I don't think there's another head coach that would fit. I think there's a lot of head coaches that want to be at Texas. I don't think many can fit at Texas, so I think they're going to keep Terry. He's done an amazing job.
Yeah, I
agree.
The only thing I want to add about Texas before I pose another question is that I do remember a couple weeks ago the Texas AD saying that he would prefer to have a current sitting head coach as opposed to a guy who's never been a head coach, like when you guys talked about with recruiting before. So I think that part could be interesting. But if they have success in the Big 12 in the Big 12 tournament in March Madness, I don't see how you get rid of them.
The thing for me is you have someone that's familiar with the program. You still have your assistants intact. I mean,
yeah, that means you keep your recruits. So,
which I think continuity is a good thing for any program, and bringing in some guy because if Rodney Terry is not gonna be the head coach, he's most likely not going to be at Texas. I mean, number one, other places are going to see this. And number two, if you bring in some other big name guy, he's bringing a whole new staff in. And do you really want to do that with how good Texas has been lately? I don't think so.
I agree.
Yeah. So, we talk about Chris Beard and not even what he did, but just the fact that we talk about head coaches getting fired. And I think the biggest head coach firing of the offseason is going to end up being Patrick Ewing at Georgetown. I mean, it's pretty much yes, he hasn't been officially fired yet. It's pretty much
the writing's on the wall.
Yeah, it's pretty much a done deal.
Yeah.
So
I think so. And I think before we started recording, Luke was talking about how college basketball is better when Georgetown is better. And it's the same thing. We're going to talk a little bit about Kenny Payne in a few minutes. I think Now, I think of those two teams like when I was growing up, when we were growing up, Georgetown and Louisville always in the tournament, always competitive. Those are two basketball schools to me. And I feel like those are two desirable jobs. Patrick Ewing's time at Georgetown has not been good. Has That's an understatement. So I think he's gone, and I think it's a desirable job.
I
Yeah,
mean,
I think
let's be honest here. The only reason Patrick Ewing still has a job is because of that miracle Big East tournament run a couple years back. Because
Mm-hmm.
if that doesn't happen, he gets fired because he has literally been the worst coach like in college record wise over the last like 3 seasons. I mean, I don't know if that facts most likely don't back that up, but that team is bad. He deserves to get fired, and I think that a lot of people will want the Georgetown job because Noah said there it's very desirable. The team is better, or college is better when that team is better.
yeah, and you talked about like when we were all growing up. I think I think of like the mid like 2010 tournament runs, and you think of the Otto Porter Georgetown team, and you think of the Louisville Final Four team with Peyton Silva, and you think of those teams with Peyton Silva and Kevin Ware, Terry Rozier, Montrezl Harrell. I mean, those are the teams I think about like making deep tournament runs when I was growing up.
Yeah, and I mean,
Peyton Silva was one of my favorite guards in college basketball growing up because of those deep tournament runs they made with Louisville.
and you go back farther with teams like Georgetown. I mean, like
There's some
AI,
serious history there.
Patrick Ewing. These teams were John Thompson was most likely the best coach in Big East history. Like this is a program with rich history. Same thing goes for Louisville, and it's just they need to be back. They've been bad for a long enough time now, for 4 or 5 years. They just have not been able to get back on their feet and get back into the tournament consistently. And it's time that they're back. And I don't think Kenny Payne's going to be the guy to do it because you can see how poorly he's done already. And Ewing has proved he's not the guy to do it. So
Yeah, and I think we talk about Kenny Payne. I mean, it was an experiment that never really started, and I don't think it needs to continue. So
I also think one other thing is with Georgetown and even Louisville. I, I mean, I'm just thinking about what happened at K State this offseason. It's like if you get a miracle hire, just like a slam dunk guy. I mean, those teams can be competitive as early as next year. There's no more rebuilding with the way the transfer portal is. So, yeah, I mean, I seriously think those two teams could get back on track, and it's not going to take them multiple years to do so if they get the right guy.
yeah, and
yeah,
and
I
I
agree.
don't think that the talent is bad on either one of those teams. I just don't think that the coaching staff is good by any means on either one of those teams.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think in terms of coaches who are on the hot seat and are they fired? Are they not? They haven't had recent success, and I think that guy is Stubblefield at DePaul. Personally, I think he's out, but I don't know what you guys think. I mean, growing up outside of Chicago, we've all been to our fair share of DePaul games, and I can remember, 4 or 5 years ago when me and Lucas went to a game and took pictures with Mark Aguirre, and they were good. I mean, DePaul was a solid basketball team in the Big East, and they're just not. They just haven't been that the last couple of years. So, do you think it's
And
time for
yeah,
Stubblefield to go?
and I think with Lato, when I remember going, we've been to a ton of DePaul games, ton of them. I love DePaul. I think this cycle, it's a tough situation they're in because they typically, not this year, I guess maybe not, but it's kind of an anomaly. The one year Luke and I went to the Texas Tech game, and I mean that team was 9-0 and had Buffalo at home, a bad Buffalo team at home, and they would have been ranked if they won that game. Would have started the year like 11-0, but this team just can't win in the Big East consistently. The Big East is a good conference. I think even an underrated conference. But that's been DePaul's issue, that you have to be somewhat consistent, close to 500 or better. I'd say a little bit better in the Big East to make the tournament. And DePaul just has not been close to doing that. So I do think the writing's on the wall. And I think if it doesn't happen this year, at the end of this year, then at the end of next year, I think.
Yeah,
Which is sad.
and it, I mean, they've been bottom feeders in the Big East for however long I can remember. I mean, it's been a while since they've been good, but it's just this whole cycle of hiring, firing, hiring a new coach, hopes up. Oh, he won a few games, fire him because he's not performing well in the Big East. And the only way you could break that cycle is recruit Chicago. You have to be able to recruit Chicago if you want to win at DePaul. It's that simple. And I know it's hard because DePaul is not a household name. It's not and you have to recruit with the likes of Illinois. Every Big Ten team's going to be coming after Chicago because Chicago's the hot spot of the Midwest, and that's what the Big Ten does. So it's hard, but you need to find a coach that is going to recruit Chicago. It's what's going to happen. And DePaul hasn't been able to do it. You look at teams that, like Illinois, when they tapped into being able to recruit Chicago and they got Io, like when they had Io Dosumu, he turned the program around because they were able to recruit Chicago. Now, every Chicago 4-star, 5-star that is coming through the Chicago high schools and the surrounding areas, Illinois is in their top 5, in their top 10. And Illinois has been a very good program over the last 4 years. So DePaul needs to be able to tap in to, Chicago. They're located in downtown Chicago, and they have not been able to recruit it well. And you want to be able to get back to being where you were in the 80s and when you had George Mikan, you were prior to the 80s. You need to be able to hit those hotspots of Chicago. It's that simple.
Yeah.
Right in their backyard.
Exactly. I mean,
really.
they're right there.
Yeah, I think it should be an interesting offseason overall for coaching, hirings, firings, guys moving to different programs. But getting into our last section before we do the locks and dogs, it's kind of our very early, because there's a lot can still happen with conference tournaments and stuff like that. Very early March Madness. And, obviously you have the top 4 conferences that are all going to send, anywhere between 6 and 8 teams to March Madness, most likely. You look at the Big Ten, they'll probably send 8 or 9. Big 12 is going to send 7 or 8. The SEC is going to probably send 6 or 7. ACC will send 6 ish.
4 or 5. ACC's bad.
The Big East is going to send 5. And then it just kind of drops off after those 5 conferences, really. In terms of like,
then you start getting into the 1-bid leagues.
You start getting into the Summit that has Oral Roberts as their 1 bid, and Furman out of the Southern, and the SWAC with Grambling State, the Conference of Historically Black Colleges and Universities, that they could make a run. They could be an upset 16 seed.
Yeah,
Interesting.
And
before I let you go, Noah, the one interesting thing I do want to say is another year where no independent teams are projected to make the tournament. So.
Yeah, well.
Anyways, go ahead.
Almost like being an independent team doesn't help.
Yeah, well, that argument comes in for a lot of other sports, but
yeah.
Anyways.
When I look at how the bracketology broke down, I think people in the Big 12 is the best conference in college basketball. It's not quite close. I think people are a little bit hesitant to look at the Big 10 just because I think pure depth this year. I mean, the Big 10, they don't have the top heavy teams like the Big 12 does, which is what makes Big 12 the best conference. I mean, you have however many teams ranked, but all of the Big 10 teams fall just outside of the rankings. And I think that this could be the year, because expectations are down, that the Big 10 could make some noise in March.
First time in a while.
Yeah, and we were talking about this earlier about the AP poll is not a good metric. It's a bunch of old guys that can't watch every game. No fault on that. I mean, who has time to watch every single college basketball game? But they can't do it, and they're just ranking these teams based on like box score watching, and that's not fair. If you look at any advanced metric, the Big 10, obviously the Big 12 is better as a conference, obviously, but then it's the Big 10. They're right there. They're the second best conference in basketball, and teams don't look at it like that because they only have 2 to 3 teams ranked every week. But you need to you can't just look at the AP to determine if it's a good conference or not. Because the Big Ten's a good basketball conference. They have teams that are very close in skill level, so they beat each other up. But I agree with what Noah said. If there's a year the Big Ten's going to break through, it's going to be this year.
Yeah. My caveat to that is, every year the Big Ten gets 8 or 9 teams that make the tournament. And I think this is a lot of other people's arguments. They get 8 or 9 teams that make the tournament, and then by the end of the first weekend, you've got 1 or 2 teams left because they spend the entire conference play just beating up on each other.
And now I do think that it's so important to note conferences change, and you can't make an argument saying the Big Ten is not going to perform well in March because they didn't last year. I mean, things change so much.
It's not fair.
You have guys graduate, you have a ton of guys transfer in, and I don't think that's a fair argument for any conference that, they didn't do well this year in March, so next year there's no way that team wins 2 games. I think it's just a weak argument, and I'm not saying anyone specifically is making it, but it's what you see all the time. The Big Ten can't win in March. Like, they didn't win last March, but I think things change over time. Teams change, coaches change. I don't think that you can really say that, and I think that the Big Ten has some really good teams this year.
Yeah, teams that are built more so for March as opposed to the last couple years. It's not as big man centric, and I know Purdue and the teams at the top of the Big Ten right now, they are big man centric. But when then I look at teams
look who was at the top of the Big Ten last year and who didn't win 2 games.
I know, but then you can look at teams like that are a little farther down the list. Michigan State, elite guard play. Northwestern, good guard play. I know they're higher up in the Big Ten. That's good guard play in Northwestern. Illinois
I was slumping lately, but they can go out and score 85 on any team. They dropped 90 on Rutgers, which has one of the best defenses in the Big Ten.
Conference, and I think I do think that there year where they can send a team to the Final Four. It's going to be this year, and it's not going to be Purdue. I'm sorry, Purdue fans. It's not going to be Purdue. I can see. I like a lot of teams in the Big Ten to be some sleeper teams that can get to the Sweet 16, Elite 8.
Yeah. I mean, you got all your 1 bid conferences, but none of the. I've kind of tried to watch like some film on some of the 1 or 2 bid conferences, and especially the 1 bid conferences. Yeah, I know that they'll make every year. There's upsets from the 1 bid conferences, but I don't. I mean, I don't really see anybody who has the talent this year to make those deep runs out of the 1 bid.
I do think Oral Roberts is pretty good.
They've got that 7'5" big man who can shoot the ball from outside.
Oral Roberts is good, but the thing about 1 bid conferences is, like, we have a list right here of all the teams that are leading the 1 bid conferences: UC Irvine, Liberty, Norfolk State. They have as much of a chance to win their conference tournament and get into March Madness as the team that's last in their conference. That's the unpredictable part about these 1 bid conferences. I can't tell you if Furman's going to be in. They can get upset. So that
is the issue with the conferences that don't get auto bids.
It's really tough to predict that.
Yeah, that's what makes it tough for the conference is that their only bid is winning the conference tournament. I mean, you look at a team like Fairleigh Dickinson out of the Northeast Conference. They've been consistently in March, but what if this is the year they just get upset in their conference tournament?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. You just don't know. You don't know.
Yale could get upset in the Ivy League. You never know.
UMBC was not supposed to win their conference tournament the year they beat Virginia. It was supposed to be Vermont. And then look what happened.
Mhm.
So that's why we love March. It's unpredictable.
The 116
The
seed
Catamounts of Vermont.
The Catamounts. How can you not love the Catamounts?
I'll give it two. The two like teams that'll probably be 16 seeds that I have watched. Not obviously, I'm not gonna sit here and say I watch film on these teams, but that I've watched a few like different game not highlights, but different game tapes. Iona, you can mark my words right now that I think they have. I'm not saying they're going to, but I think they have a chance to get an upset in the first couple days of March. Is Iona and Texas A&M Corpus Christi out of the South End Conference, and those are the two teams I think that could have a chance to upset somebody in March.
No, I mean I like Rick Pitino. I don't like what he does off of the court and all that stuff, but he's a good coach. It's that simple. He's a good coach, and he could lead a team to an upset. But the talent levels at Iona and Texas A&M Corpus Christi compare nothing to what you have at Kansas and Baylor. So it's extremely difficult for those teams to pull off those upsets.
Yeah, I just think a school like Texas A&M Corpus Christi's got a chance.
I don't.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love all my people. I love all my people down in Corpus Christi. So this one's for you guys. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. Like come conference tournament time, we'll have this discussion again, and I think it's going to look very different. But moving on from that to our final section, which is our section that happens every episode. There's some controversy. We got some winners, we got some losers every episode. It's locks and dogs. I mean, I'll start it off with my NCAA lock of the week. I'm gonna go Gonzaga. The Bulldogs at San Diego -23. This game's not even in the kennel. They're on the road and they're -23.
That's what happens when you play in the WCC. It's that simple.
True. But I thought
my lock actually also stay in the Western Coast Conference. I have St. Mary's over Pacific. I know literally nothing about
Gales,
Pacific.
baby.
I know nothing about Pacific, and I know St. Mary's is liked by the metrics. So St. Mary's will win that game.
The Gales are going to pull out a big one there.
The Gales of St. Mary's.
Yep. What do you got as your lock of the week, Noah?
You already know. I'm taking Illinois. Still don't know if Terrence Shannon's going to play. I'm stressing. I'm taking Illinois over Northwestern, and every time I give analysis on why Illinois is going to win a game, they lose. So I mean, I think they're the more talented team.
Shut up! Don't give analysis if they lose every time you do it.
That's fair.
I'm taking Illinois over Northwestern tonight.
So moving on to dogs of the week. I'll go first.
Everybody hates you.
I'm not going to sit here and say I totally agree with my dog of the week, but somebody's.
You just want to be a contrarian.
Somebody's got to stir the
controversy.
Somebody's got to stir the pot in every episode. So I'm going to take the Wildcats out of Evanston, Illinois, +6.5, traveling down to Champaign. They're going to go into SFC, and they're going to wipe the floor +6.5 over Illinois.
Give me some analysis as to why you think that will happen.
Yeah, Peter. Other than Boo Booey and Chase Audige,
okay,
tell me a couple
team.
players on Northwestern.
I just said I don't. I don't agree with my underdog, but someone has to stir the pot. What do you want me to do here?
I'm just saying, name another player. Can I give you?
Can I give you what I was going to say before you start attacking me?
Let the man talk, then we attack him.
Yes, at least let me get my words out before I get attacked. I just want to say that I think Chase Audige is going to shoot better than like 18% for the field. I think he's going to come out here and have a consistent game on the offensive end. And Boo Booey's just going to control the pace of play on offense. And they're going to.
Okay, who else? Who else?
I
You
just.
can't, two guys can't combine.
Would
for
you
70.
just relax?
Give me someone else. No, come on.
Oh my God!
They-
All right.
they're-
Oh no! That's
Peter, come on. They're your underdog. They're your
And
underdog.
will play
Why do you
tonight.
think
And I
that?
just
if
said I
this
don't.
changes
I
anything,
just
you
said I don't.
morons, you should listen to this.
Breaking
What?
news on the pod. Breaking news on the pod.
Terrence Shannon is in tonight for Illinois. He will
Oh,
play.
well, okay. Can I change my
No,
dog?
no.
Okay,
No.
well, now that
Noah?
Terrence Shannon's playing Northwestern,
Noah?
is going to lose that game.
Noah, who is your don't listen to Peter. He's a clown, doesn't know anything about college basketball. Noah, who's your underdog?
I'm curious. I'm gonna go back to Peter here, and
Oh,
I'm gonna
Jesus.
see. Let's try to be just even about this. What do you think? Why do you think Northwestern wins this game?
I genuinely like without Lucas
Boo
attacking.
Booey and Chase Audige are great players. They've gotten better their entire time.
Literally,
at
without Lucas
Northwestern.
attacking me, I genuinely think that Northwestern wins strictly off of guard play. I
Well,
genuinely
obviously.
think they win off of guard.
It's fair, and that's
I-
fair.
And that's my analysis for the game.
I want to say something though, is regard to a reason why Northwestern may beat Illinois tonight. Illinois plays drop coverage, and Northwestern has guards that rake in the mid-range area and at the rim. So when you play drop coverage, it's wide open mid-range, it's wide open floater. So that's what concerns me as an Illinois fan, and I'm just deflecting because I'm nervous. So
Well,
Me too.
let's move on. What do you got as your dog of the week?
are we on to me or Noah?
You.
So I have Mississippi State over Texas Agriculture and Mechanics. That is Texas A&M. It's not like some clown school. I just don't like Texas Agriculture and Mechanics, so I'm picking Mississippi State. Go Dogs!
I can agree with you on not liking the Aggies. I can agree with you on that one.
It's a weird school. It's a weird dynamic they have down there, and
I will say though, Mississippi State's got a weird dynamic too. They do.
I'm sure it's an SEC school. What do you expect?
But Texas A&M does not have female cheerleaders, at least for football. They have only male cheerleaders that wear milkmen costumes. So that has any input on college basketball.
I'm
Just
good for them giving men an opportunity in a sport where they are mostly dominated by women.
Yeah, it's not what I was just saying that it was just
why you're forcing them to wear milkman costumes is exactly why I'm picking Mississippi State to win.
There we go. That's all I was looking for. Noah, what do you got as your dog of the week?
Penn State at Ohio State tonight, and I really don't know how Ohio State is favored in this game. Probably because they're at home, but after watching firsthand Penn State, I don't know if the nights that I watch Penn State, they could beat the Golden State Warriors. And I think if they shoot like crazy, I mean, Jalen Pickett is one of the best point guards in the Big Ten. And Ohio State's just a mess all around. And it's been a brutal year in Columbus. And I think Penn State needs to rack up wins to better their resume for March Madness, and I think they get it done tonight on the road.
All right.
As this is being
team.
filmed, I want to point out one thing. As this is being filmed, Noah had no prior knowledge of this, but Penn State and Ohio State are tied right now with 37, and Jalen Pickett, aka when he plays against Illinois, Michael Jeffrey Jordan, he has 2 points at halftime.
Ooh.
So there we go. And they are tied.
Yeah,
they are tied.
I had no previous knowledge.
Technically, Noah, I will give you this: that being tied at halftime right now, Penn State is covering them +2.5. That makes you
I know. I think they win, but man, with Pickett playing that poorly, or I don't know,
and they're still tied.
But
it'll be an interesting second half for sure.
He's 1 of 3 with 3 assists.
Okay, so he's just not really shooting the ball.
Who's heating up for him? Funk or
Lundy? Lundy has 14. Funk has 0.
Dude, Seth Lundy's tough. If that team gets in March Madness,
it'll be interesting.
They can beat anyone.
But
beat anyone.
I think that's pretty much all we got for you guys in this episode. So like, subscribe, comment if you guys have any ideas for our future episodes. And yeah, I mean that's pretty much all we got for you guys this week. So thank you, and we'll see you in the next episode.
ILL.
I and I.
I and I.